Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Raymond Peterson.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And I'm Alan Singer.
Dr. Alan Singer, educated historian, regular with us on Media Watch, and happy to have him again. We're doing this being brought to you by the good graces of EVT Educational Productions, Zoom, and we'll show up on Manhattan Neighborhood Network maybe next Monday at some point in the future. But we're doing this a Wednesday before what would be a Monday airing.
July 31st.
And we'll put it up on YouTube as well. So yeah, Wednesday, July 31st. This is being done about an hour after the presumptive nominee, the actual nominee for the Republican Party slot for President of the United States, one Donald Trump, T-Rump, I tend to call him, had an appearance before the National Association of Black Journalists. And Bob, as a still member of NABJ, I have not been part of that for a while, but that's another story for another time. Tell us how that went and what the brouhaha was about, whether he should have been there in the first place.
We're taping, like you said, just about an hour after he got off stage at the NABJ convention in Chicago. And his appearance, Trump's appearance at the conference, was a last-minute thing. He wasn't on these conventions are planned years in advance, and he wasn't on the schedule until Monday night. So conventioneers getting ready to go to Chicago just heard about it, and there was a gigantic rift in the organization over whether he should have been invited, because he's had this history of insulting and being unprofessional towards all journalists, but especially Black journalists and especially Black female journalists, which he insulted people like Yami Alcindor, Abby Phillip, and April Ryan in a row while he was president. But in any case, he made it to Chicago today and basically continued the same kind of unsubstantiated comments, lies, and insults. So you can now add Rachel Scott of ABC to the list of Black female journalists that he's insulted.
That's what I was going to ask you. Who were they using to help try to grill this lying lunatic?
There was Rachel Scott, there was Harris Faulkner of Fox, and Ketty Goba. I forget her affiliation, but she's a well-known journalist.
Rachel's with ABC News, yeah.
Yes, Rachel's with ABC News, of course. And they all grilled him, but Rachel opened up, she said, with the elephant in the room. So she went right after his treatment of the press and his comments about Black people. And Trump opened by saying that he said, I think it's a very rude introduction. So he opens with that. And he says, you invited me here under false pretenses. And you can imagine the mood in the room as he says that. We're at the Black NABJ conference in Chicago. And this is
false
Trump.
Pretenses? What did he think he was going before a group of journalists?
Exactly, Eric. Yeah, what did he expect? And then he says this, which I didn't think he would say in Chicago. I have been the best president for the Black population since Abraham Lincoln. And you can imagine the thunderous "ooh, what?" that went through the room at that moment. It was Trump as usual in Chicago. And just let me throw in this one more comment about Kamala Harris, the presumptive Democratic nominee. He alleges that for her whole life she had identified as Indian. She's Black and Indian, and she never actually went around as a Black person. So he says, quote, I didn't know she was Black until a number of months ago, a number of years ago, when she happened to turn Black. So he's alleging that Kamala Harris has turned Black for the sake of convenience. It was Trump.
For those who don't know, she got her law degree in a historically Black university. And she chose to go there because of her identity as Black.
Mm.
And Trump made sure to mention that she didn't pass her bar exam first time. Obviously, she passed it eventually. I know plenty of good lawyers who didn't pass their bar the first time, so that means nothing. But it was very, and as usual, he didn't answer the questions that were given. Harris Faulkner Fox was probably the easiest of the questioners, and we kind of expected that. Katie Goebel was pretty good, and so was Rachel Scott. So yeah.
Test that Donald Trump ever passed was naming the 6 things in a row. But Donald Trump was expelled from middle school.
Yeah, there we go. But you saw it as well as I did, Alan. There was basic Trump talking to Black journalists, and I give the room credit for not screaming at some of those comments. They were, you notice he didn't come on stage with much applause, and he didn't leave stage with much applause. It was basically, well, it's over, let's go. And when he got on stage, it was like, oh, well, hell, he's here. Anyway, too long to go into here because we have other things to talk about. But it was basic Trump before Black journalists making no inroads in that group. He convinced no one in that room that he's the president of the Black population, as he calls it.
I'm surprised he didn't get applause as he was leaving.
Oh, maybe they cut off the audio too soon.
Well, you know, as he said, there was something wrong with the mics or something.
He did multiple times. Yes. When he got a question that he didn't like. Go ahead, Alan. I'm sorry.
Sorry. He behaved the same way he did in the debate. Whatever you asked
what I
made
would have
no
expected.
difference. He just did his rant. And I think you can't pin him down because he will not answer a question.
Well, he evidently proved that it's not a one-time performance. It's his standard stage. shtick.
Right.
You ask a question, he rants with 16 million people came in illegally and are taking our job. You ask a question about abortion. Oh, well, no, 16 million people come into our country taking our jobs. I saw that on the debate. That's it. This is crazy. This is not even a debate. He doesn't answer any of the questions that the moderators throw at him. And then he throws a wall of lies. So, yeah.
And
well,
what was the worst one, Alan? Was it the January 6th question where he compared that to the pro-Palestinian protesters from 5 days ago who, I guess they put some graffiti on some monuments. He equated that to January 6th.
Apparently, they didn't kill anybody at the pro-Palestinian demonstration, and they didn't desecrate the United States Congress. They were having a demonstration outside of the Amtrak train station.
Right. But he made that an equivalent to January 6th. So, yeah, it was Trump.
Well, an equivalent to January 6th, but January 6th was, according to the Republicans, peaceful tourists coming to see the Capitol. So that's a new change story. Oh, it's like Palestinian demonstrations, not peaceful tourists coming to visit the Capitol.
Yeah, they needed to beat the cops out of their way so they could get a better look.
At the Capitol, yes.
Yeah.
But the battle, I saw where the co-chair of NABJ resigned. He said it was not just this visit. This was just one of many issues that she would not go into. But that one did play a role in her resignation, according to her.
The conference co-chair, correct. She resigned as she heard about the Trump visit. Yes.
Yeah, and April
She said she wasn't. Yeah, she said she wasn't even consulted. She was co-chair.
Yeah. When your co-chair doesn't know what's going on, that's
that's bad.
No kidding.
That's bad when your co-chair doesn't know what's going on. So I mean, my feeling was, put him on the spot. Let him prove that he can tell the truth. And he had a platform. He was put on the spot and he proved he couldn't tell the truth and he didn't answer the question. So you have another look at him. I understand. My thinking is if they felt they needed to invite him, they should have had Yamiche Alcindor, April Ryan, Abby Phillips asking the questions on the panel. Because those are the people that he insulted and actually put in danger with his craziness and his MAGA people. And so that's who, as co-chair or president of NABJ, I would have asked and paid their way to come and sit on that panel to question that wacko that you gave a platform to. That for me would justify your giving him that platform.
That would have been great, but why would you expect that he would act any differently?
No. But you give the people the chance that he has put in jeopardy to nail him against the wall. I mean, for me, that's a reason for putting him there, not just to put him there to possibly lie again, to give your folk that he's insulted a chance to get back at him. For me, that's a fabulous way of doing things, but they didn't do that.
No, they didn't.
So,
but Ray,
That's your point, Eric.
Ray, I'm guilty of being optimistic. I was hoping that this would be a moment where we would actually get good information out of him. So I blame myself.
I apologize, Bob, for not being as optimistic as you are.
okay, but you know what? We saw him being exactly who we know he is.
Yeah, and I don't know why anybody would expect anything different from this guy. He obfuscates. I mean, he lies.
I gave you my reasoning. I
know, and I agree with your reasoning in that it would give these women an opportunity to express their views. Absolutely. But he's not going to respond to it. He's just not going to respond to it because he doesn't.
Speaking of
how many times have you seen him avoid a direct question or lie?
Enough of Trump. Speaking of not responding, I like that. That gave us a good segue. The guy who seems to not be responding is Benjamin Netanyahu, not responding to the wishes of the hostage families that he met with here just a week ago. And they left that meeting with him feeling optimistic about him trying to actually push forward this peace plan that might bring the hostages home. Alan, you came up with the latest breaking story that tells me he refuses to listen to anybody anywhere. What was that story that just broke?
Yesterday, Israel assassinated the leading Palestinian peace conference negotiator while he was visiting in Iran.
No, not the leading Palestinian.
I'm sorry,
leading
Hamas.
Yeah.
The leading Hamas. Thank you for that correction. One, threatening to expand the war because essentially they invaded Iran to do this. But also, as Egypt and Qatar said, how are we going to have negotiations? You just killed the guy who you were negotiating with. He comes to the United States, he has some more weapons, he has some more money, we're going to get peace. They don't want peace. They want perpetual war. And they have done whatever they could to undermine any peace negotiations. The proposal that Joe Biden made, Israel keeps moving the line so there can be no agreement.
Yeah.
And I say I have to agree with the International Court of Justice. He is a war criminal.
No, he is most definitely. Didn't he even think that doing this assassination would hurt the return of the remaining hostages?
I have a theory, no proof, but for Netanyahu's way of thinking, there are no hostages that are still alive being held by Hamas. Because every action that he has taken to torpedo this peace plan and to try to, quote, bring the hostages home tells me he does not care about the hostages. So it tells me he assumes those hostages are no longer alive. And so he
just doesn't care.
See, I kept saying he doesn't care, but I'm thinking he doesn't care because he doesn't think they're alive.
Okay.
That's why he's acting the way he's acting. I got no proof of this.
No.
It has to be some reason for him to be so adamant about not trying to get to a solution of peaceful rapport to bring the hostages home. Because like you said, Alan, he keeps changing the goalposts.
Right.
He keeps doing things like killing the key negotiator from Hamas. That means he doesn't care about hostages. So that means he doesn't believe there are any hostages still alive. That's my theory. Go ahead.
And he also doesn't want peace because he doesn't believe in peaceful coexistence. I mean, you know, he wants to push these people into the sea.
Bob?
I agree. Eric, when I read the story, when it broke overnight, I had to read it twice. I mean, I really had to get my brain around it. Like, why would they take this guy out if he's the guy who's I mean, the fact that they're talking at all is a surprise to me, and was a good thing. So why would they go out of their way into another country and take him out, leaving? What is that going to do to what remains of Hamas? They're not going to be in any mood to negotiate anything. And probably that's what he wants. He wants another army to be angry so that he would have another reason to take them out. When he was here in the US talking to Congress, he called protesters useful idiots. He's the idiot, and he's not particularly useful.
Nice turn of phrase, Bob.
I wasn't insulted as a useful idiot personally.
Excellent turn of phrase, and I agree with you. He is not useful, and he's more than an idiot. He actually, you know, that phrase that our politicians used to throw around, evil. This guy's beginning to look like an evil person to me. Actions like that, to take out the key negotiator that might bring peace and help bring your hostages home, you have to have some kind of evil mentality to sanction something like that. Now, I may be going out on a limb here, and I normally don't try to use those phrases like axis of evil and evil this, but this guy's actions, Alan, you said you're beginning to agree with the International Criminal Court that maybe he's a guy that should be brought up on charges, like they might be issuing arrest warrants for him. Look, there's another story along those lines, and it ties into what's going on the global stage right now. And that's the Olympics going on in Paris right now. The thing that caught my eye was tied just to what's going on in the Mideast. And that was the fact that one of the torchbearers turned out to be a journalist that was actually injured when Israel was striking in Lebanon against Hezbollah. And this journalist had to have part of her leg amputated. And a Reuters cameraman was killed. And Bob, you might be able to find the video that shows her, but she was selected. Lebanese photojournalist, severely wounded during an Israeli strike on South Lebanon, carried the Olympic torch in Paris to honor journalists wounded and killed in the field. And they actually selected, what's her name? Asi, what's her full name?
Christina Asi.
Yeah. They selected her, and she was carrying a torch in a wheelchair because part of her leg was amputated. And videographer Dylan Collins from Agence France Presse, he was also wounded in that attack, and he's pushing her wheelchair in that Olympic torch procession. So these journalists were being honored for doing their tough job on the firing line. And the interesting thing about the story, it's an AP story that I called up. And the paragraph that caught my eye was Reuters, Agence France Presse, and Al Jazeera accused Israel of targeting their journalists who maintained they were positioned far from where the clashes were taking place, with their vehicles clearly marked as press. And the international human rights organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch said the attack was a deliberate attack on civilians and should be investigated as a war crime. So here we go again. The young lady, is that it? I'm glad you brought that up, Bob. That's her in the wheelchair. That's the videographer behind her who was also injured, pushing that wheelchair. And they're being celebrated for their courage. And I'm glad that the world can see that there are frontline journalists being honored for their toughness and their courage under fire at the Olympics. This for me is a phenomenal shot and a phenomenal tribute, because there were at least 90 plus Mideast journalists who have lost their lives. Last time we took a count, it was in the high 90s, and that was just in the Gaza area. We're not talking about West Bank and Lebanon. So the number is definitely over 100 of journalists who have lost their lives, and a ton more who have been injured. And yeah, we've said it before, there's ample evidence that seemed to indicate that the Israelis are targeting journalists. So yeah. But
And the Committee to Protect Journalists is among those who have come out and talked about how exactly what you said, Eric, about how Israel has targeted journalists in the past and has even when they're clearly marked. And there are other cases around the world, of course, not just Israel, but Israel has been particularly guilty, according to these organizations.
Yep.
Now puts the count at 113 journalists who have been murdered in the Gaza war, primarily by Israel.
There we go. So yeah, but enough negativity. This is a positive shot. That shot that Bob just had up there with the young lady. Now, if we could get Bob to continue that and come up with the positive spin on what's going on, because the US ladies, the gymnastic ladies, I call them, were on their redemption tour, and it turned out to be a very positively goal-producing redemption tour, because last night, they came up with gold as the winners of the Olympic team gymnastics for women. And look at that picture. Alan, you commenting about that
America
picture?
should be.
I talked over you. Say that again.
A picture of what America should be. It's at our best. From left to right. Jordan Childs, one of her parents is Black, the other is Latina. Hazel Rivera, her parents are immigrants from Dominican Republic. Simone Biles is African American. Jade Carey, European American. And Sunisa Lee is Hmong, from her mother is from Laos in Southeast Asia. What a multicultural triumph. They represent America at its best.
They are the top gymnasts in the world right now. Now, I'm not talking about world games, but the Olympics bring all those world gymnasts together because they all want Olympic gold. They have world medals, but they all seem to want that medal above all, the Olympic gold. Any Olympic medal, really, because these world championships go on even when the Olympics aren't around. And so these folks go up against each other. But for some reason, this Olympic medal tends to be the be all and end all. And so when they took silver the last time around, they were not happy. These girls are used to getting gold. And so they called it the redemption tour, and they redeemed themselves. And not all of them were on that silver medal team, because like you said, that 16-year-old, she wasn't on that team. But here she is now, the next generation. Those are
this was the medal they wanted. I mean, there were individual medals to win, but in the final round, in the qualifying rounds, I think it's like you take 3 of the 4 top scores. But in the final round, every score counts. So, everyone had to perform to get the gold medal. You couldn't, this wasn't the moment for messing up. And they got it. Yep. And I have a friend who's a photographer who covers these women year round. So I'm familiar with this team, and they're awesome in terms of teamwork. I mean, I'm not saying that just because they got the medal. This is a good team in terms of teamwork. So congrats, ladies.
Yeah, they seem to actually have phenomenal camaraderie amongst the group. They're like, it's us against the world kind of thing. That's what came across to me when I was watching them during the Olympics. They always talk about, yeah, we. this team, this team, this team. It's just an amazing cohesion that, and I don't think it's an act. I think that's who they are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they've all been through something. I mean, we know about Simone, and we know about Suni Lee's incredibly bad health problems, and she came back from it. So yeah, this is an awesome comeback team. And we have about 2 minutes left. Sorry, Ray, I talked over you.
That's all right. No, I was going to say, Alan, you're absolutely correct. This is a picture, the spirit of America, and it just indicates their performances, what they manage to have their bodies do, proves that if you put your mind to it, you can do anything you want to do. Look, imagine if the populace exercise their brains the way these women exercise their bodies. Can you imagine? I mean, Trump wouldn't be running for president because he never gotten close enough to
Let's
do
hope
that.
they
Anyhow,
all come out for Kamala.
This
I
is
hope so.
this is brain
And
and
come on, how many of them are the only Simone? She's the only one old enough to vote, isn't she?
Oh,
no, they
only
got a
one.
couple that are still.
I think only Hazel is too young. The others are all old enough to
Oh,
vote.
are they? Okay.
Yeah,
I have no idea that, anybody under 30 looks like a kid to me.
Yes.
No.
I'm
But
serious.
we salute them, and the fact that they actually represent America across the spectrum of what America should look like, does look like. They just reflect what the country looks like.
Absolutely.
And so I'm
Absolutely.
happy.
And we have about less than a minute left.
Well, less than a minute. There's not much else to do. We'll leave that shot up while we talk about the fact that there's an election going on, and another strong woman now probably going to be at the top of the ticket for Democrats to against the guy who spews a lot of lies and won't answer questions. That's Kamala Harris. She's re-energized the Democratic Party and voters and independents and Democrats and whomever. There's another whole thing going on, So I see Alan's putting up a Kamala logo over there.
I made a Kamala t-shirt to wear.
But not that we're picking sides, but we don't like people who attack democracy and tell lies. So I can say that without fear of anyone on this panel contradicting me. So that being said, we'll talk about SCOTUS and the fact that there's a push for Supreme Court reform. We didn't get a chance to talk about William Cowley passing, the only person ever convicted.
But we're about there.
So this has been Media Watch, folks. I'm Eric Tait.
I'm Raymond Peterson.
Alan Singer.
And I'm Bob Anthony. Catch us on YouTube at Media Watch EVT.
And we'll catch you the next time, folks. Stay safe.